All right, so let's talk about culture, guys. Talked about leadership in the last one. Now we're going to kind of transition over to culture. This is typically the second thing that we work through inside of our process, right? Of our contractor's blueprint. So a lot of companies, whether you know it or not, you have a culture inside of your company. Let's be honest about it, right? But what defines culture inside of a company?
It's the way that you do things. It's your personality, it's your character. It's kind of like saying what defines a human being. Like what defines Jim or Nathan or Tommy? And you say, well, how would you describe Nathan? Okay, and there's going to be some physical attributes, maybe, dark hair, tall, glorious mustache, whatever.
I was going to say bad mustache.
Whatever it happens to be, right? Then you're gonna taller than average, quite frankly. Then you're gonna get some probably some internal traits, like maybe the way that I talk to people, or how I behave myself, or whether somebody thinks that I'm very serious, or I'm a thinker, or I'm funny, or I'm other characteristics, right?
Sure.
Smells terrible, whatever. And so if you were to take your business and try to describe it the same way you would describe a person, I would say that's your culture.
Okay.
I think it's how two components perceive you. The people that work for you, how do they perceive the business as like you said, like a human being? Is it a place that's fun to work? Is it a place that's competitive to work? Is it a good environment? Is it a bad environment? Is it a family? Is it like, what does that feel to it? I think there's also this outside perception. What's the reputation of it? Are they ethical, unethical? Are they aggressive? Do they have big trucks? Like all that kind of stuff plays into it. But I believe that there's actually a recipe for that, designing a culture. Because if you don't design it, it will be designed for you. It'll happen organically. The people that work for you will create that culture, and it may not align with you. As an owner, our whole joy and work fulfillment aspect of things needs to be that we created this little baby that we've got that's a business, and it's going to grow over time. We want that to be a place where we feel fulfilled working, happy working, joyful working, and that we're aligned with it. And so if we don't design it and we allow the people to design it for us, it may become something that we don't want to be a part of anymore. So I think it's really important to understand that, yes, I have a culture. A lot of times that culture is predicated on the leader. That he attracts certain people, and those people are a lot like him. And so it starts to have a culture very much like him. But if he brings somebody into the equation that's not like him because he sees some value in him for some reason or another, he sees like he can sell a lot or he can be a great production manager, but he doesn't fit me necessarily, but I don't care. Like he just does a good job at what he does. He might bring something into that culture that's more of a virus, more of a thing that causes dysfunction in a family. You can think of it as culture as like a family a little bit. Like, hey, this family gets along or it's dysfunctional. And if you don't design it, you have a very high likelihood of it becoming dysfunctional over time. When you hear things like, I have a lot of turnover, there's drama in my business, people aren't loyal, people aren't doing what I asked them to do, that's usually a sign that culture is dysfunctional.
So two questions come out of that I have. This is number one, and we're going to start with this one, and we'll spend some time here for a little bit. How do you figure out what your culture will be in your company?
Ooh, great question. I believe it has one key component that delivers everything else. Okay. When we start a business, I think a lot of us have some kind of foggy notion, at least, of what we dream that it's going to be someday. That it's going to deliver this thing for me that I have in mind, whether that's wealth or a vehicle that has growth for people, whatever the thing may be. We also look at it as this thing that's going to provide something to me. We usually describe it as the dream. What's the dream with this whole thing? Why am I doing all this in the first place? Because if I can start to identify that dream of why I'm going after the thing that I'm going after, that becomes very much about me and the owner or the ownership group. Like, why are we doing all this in the first place? That helps you develop a vision about the business itself. I know what my dream is, so the vision of the business to facilitate that dream is this. And so that's kind of your second component. But you can't do that really well unless you know what you're aiming for personally, I don't think. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, businesses have to make decisions. What is it that you're using to define what the right decision is? This is a huge problem with a lot of business owners because they get opportunities brought to them, especially if they gain momentum and they've accomplished any amount of growth. Opportunities start coming to them because people either want to participate or they want them to participate in their thing, or they have an idea and this guy's got a little bit of money and maybe he can help them get their idea off the ground. So these opportunities are going to come at you, and then you have to figure out which ones of these opportunities are the right ones, if any of them. And it's not just about the opportunities that come to you either. It's about the ones that you create. What kind of opportunities are we going to create? Where are we taking this company? How big is this company going to get? How long is it going to take us to get there? All of those things need to have some purpose behind it. Otherwise, you will kind of wander aimlessly. So if you imagine going into the gym and not knowing, you're going into the gym, you want to work out, and that's about all you know. But you don't know what that end goal is. Are you trying to increase your cardiovascular strength? Are you trying to burn fat? Are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to, what are you after? Are you after flexibility? All of those things, the answers to those questions are what are going to decide how you operate inside the gym and what you do. And so you have to answer that question first. It's why if you go talk to any trainer about getting healthy, they're going to go, what do you want? What are you trying to accomplish? And then they'll design a system that you're going to follow to get there. And so they'll be like, well, nope, we're not going to lift heavy because we're going to do this. And so your dream has to start with whoever it is that really is the company. And generally speaking, that's going to be the owner, certainly at first. That the owner started this thing and they started it for a reason. What is that reason and what are they after? Because at the end of the day, everybody at that company could leave and the company could still exist as long as that owner is there.
I think most owners, it kind of happens one of two ways. They either start the business because they think it's going to bring them a lot of wealth, money, like that has a big proponent to it. And sometimes it almost happens by accident. Like they are good at what they do, and so they get another job, and this thing starts to become a thing, and they really aren't thinking about down there. In either case, I don't think they're thinking far enough down the road, because once you get the money, then what? You start to lose some of that fulfillment, that energy, and everything else about the business. We've seen that actually happen over and over again, where we'll help a company grow, and they achieve things they never thought they would achieve before, and they'll take their eye off the ball. And in very short order, they'll start to decline, because there wasn't something bigger than just making the money or hitting the dollar. That's why we always start with the dream. Like, what's that big, huge thing that you're going after? It's not really like a BHAG for the company necessarily. This big, hairy, audacious goal with a number.
Life.
Yeah, what do you want for your life? What kind of impact do you want to make? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? How do you want to foster the relationships in your life? Like, when you know what that looks like, it's pretty easy to build the vision around your business. And that vision is, for lack of a better term, what you're selling to everybody that you want to become a part of your business.
If you have a significant other, or you're interested in a potential significant other, do not discount their thoughts, opinions, or understanding of whatever your dream might be. So this is huge. If you're a man or a woman and you already have a significant other, you're married to this person, you need to talk to them about what you see for your life or your life collectively, because there's two of you. And so what are they after? And so if you're thinking this business is generally the vehicle to your dream, you're going to need to know what her dream is or his dream is. Because if they're not on board, I say this and it usually grabs a chuckle, but if your significant other, your spouse is not on board with your dream and you push for that thing, they can make it happen, they can break it, or they can take half of it. So you want to build a $10 million company and they're not on board for that, you just built a $5 million company. So you need to have them involved.
They got to understand the sacrifice it's going to take.
And there's sacrifice on both sides. Sometimes I might not be home to put the kids to bed, or I might not be able to stop by the store, or I might not be able to do this thing or that thing, and somebody else might have to pick up that slack because we're both on board for this thing that we're after. And if you're not married, then your dream could be a deal breaker in that relationship. If you've ever sat down, this would be interesting if you're dating somebody right now and you're going, I have a business, and I got a guy in mind right now as I think about this. What's up, Atlanta? But he's not married, and he's building a company, and he's doing a great job. And he may have visions of what he wants to do with his life. And if the gal he's dating isn't on board for that, does he alter his dream, or is that a move-on relationship kind of thing? So keep that in mind as you're building your dream, is that it isn't just about you all the time.
And if you have a partner in your business,
same
part
thing.
of our coaching is, hey, you guys better be aligned in your dream, and if they are different, does the vision of the company facilitate both of them?
Yes, because it is totally possible that one of those partners wants to hunt and fish for the rest of his life. That's what he sees as retirement. And the other guy wants to buy a boat and sail around the Bahamas. Two different dreams and two different views of how they want to live their life or what they want to do. One company could facilitate both of those things.
Yeah. So that gets us to this vision aspect of things.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is the culture kind of dependent upon the vision?
I believe 100%.
Because that's what I'm kind of gathering from what you guys are talking about.
There's kind of a formula to this thing. Like, I got this dream that's this thing I'm going after. I'm going to build this company to facilitate that dream. And so this is the type of company I need to build. And so that starts to become part of your vision. How big is it? How many people work for you? What's the environment like? Is it competitive? Is it corporate? Is it family? Is it like, you're thinking about these things because they need to be aligned with who you are. This idea of who am I and what feeds me. If that company isn't aligned with that, who you are first, before you go chase why you're doing something, and you listen to what the world tells you about why you should be doing things, a lot of times you see these visions not align with who a person is as an individual because of that disconnect between a dream and their vision. I really think it's the most important piece of our culture because it's the thing that you're now focused on. It is the beacon, the North Star. It's the thing that you're telling everybody about all the time. I can tell you in 60 seconds what the vision of my business is, what that's going to be, the role you play in it, and how it's going to benefit you. Hopefully you like the sound of that, and I can explain more. And we get a little bit deeper into it. Then I get to explain to you why it's so important. And this idea of purpose, this passion behind why we're doing what we're doing. I don't know too many home service contractors that are like, man, I do it because I love putting a roof on or putting a fence up or painting a deck or whatever it is that you do as a home service contractor. Well, I'd like to think that it's something more than money. Like that could be a why early on, especially for younger people trying to get, hey, I got to get financially set. But that only takes us so far once you have the money. So you really need to ask yourself, why is my company doing what they're doing? Is it to foster leadership and growth with the people that come to work for you? Is it to give a portion of what you make to some type of charity or philanthropy or maybe a foundation? But once you get why you're actually, maybe it's that you want to protect consumers from nefarious home service contractors. Maybe that's your purpose. Maybe that's why you do what you do. That really speaks to a certain group of people and repels another group of people. And that's what we're trying to do with our culture is say, hey, because of who we are and what we do, how we do it, why we do it, it's attractive to somebody. But some people might go, man, I'm not on board for that. I don't want to see us give part of our money to charity. I need to, like, that could be money that I would make. I'm not on board for that. So that why part of it, I think, is really important too. What do you think on that part?
I think purpose is important. It helps to tie people's greater connectivity to things into the business. So we as people, as much as some of us realize it more than others, but we want more than things.
We do.
And we want belonging, and we want purpose, and we want to be a part of something.
I think that's something that, like, you hear a lot how millennials don't want to work, they're lazy, and all that other good stuff. They're just not driven like the Gen X people were. I think Gen X people were about money and that kind of thing, and the retirement picket fence and work as hard as you have to work to get it done. I think millennials are a little more along the line, like, hey, whatever I do, I want it to have some kind of impact. I want it to mean something.
Yeah, and even, I mean, so one thing to realize too, which has started to slip past some people, is millennials are getting into their 40s. Like, millennials are not, they're not the kids anymore. Millennials own businesses and own homes, and they're starting to become middle and high level management at companies at this point. They're in their 30s, they're creeping into their 40s. Like, millennials aren't the kids anymore. Gen X and Gen Y and Gen Z are the young ones at this point. Mm-hmm. And so
I think they're along those lines too.
They are. I think they're motivated differently.
Yeah.
So stop talking crap about millennials.
They're motivated. They're motivated differently, and they see the world a little bit differently. And I think there's some pluses and minuses with that. I think that human beings are essentially still the same. Mm-hmm. I think that even though you might be money motivated, there's another thing underneath that motivation, which is what you want that money for. And I think that millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, I think it's a little more on the surface, whereas the older generations, that stuff might have been a little bit more underneath. And so they're being a little more upfront about it, and they want to be part of something. Now, I think that the money part of it is interesting because, at least in America, and I can only speak for America on this, the greatest generation, the boomers, created so much wealth with what they did. And so when you think about the newer generation, so millennials, Gen Y, and Gen Z, their great-grandparents and grandparents, for generally speaking and generationally, did very, very well. And so I think that they tend to see money as a byproduct, and they don't necessarily think of money as the goal, because their grandparents and their parents did so well. They're not necessarily thinking about just survival, which is what their grandparents were thinking about coming out of the Great Depression. So now they look at life and they go, well, money is just, there's money everywhere, right? Which isn't necessarily true. So there's a downside potentially to this.
But there's more opportunity than there's ever been.
There's also more opportunity all over the place. And so if you're trying to attract these kids, and you're a Gen Xer, or maybe you're a baby boomer, and you just go, hey, you just work hard, you make a lot of money, and then you can go do what you want. That's not necessarily how they see life. They want their work to matter. And I think the further back you went, work was a matter of survival.
Which is why I think it's hard for home service contractors. It's hard for them to connect that their work actually matters. They have this like self-belief that, well, we're just doing roofing, or we're just doing siding, or like it's not anything that really matters. And maybe that's the case. Maybe that roofing or that painting or that fencing doesn't matter as much as you think. But the vehicle that you've built can matter.
That's where your purpose comes in. Your purpose can be more. And I was talking about this just the other day. And you guys might know the answer to this. I can't remember. It's either Gen Y or Gen Z is being called the loneliest generation.
It's Gen Y.
Gen Y. They have the highest amount of technological connectivity to the world that has ever been known to mankind. And they're the loneliest group of people that we have right now.
And don't forget, human behavior tells us we want to belong.
We want to belong. So maybe the thing that you might offer is just a tribe. You might offer a family, you might offer a community, and that's part of your purpose for your company. So I know we kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I do have some passion about this thing in that we connect with human beings, and it's okay to draw people who identify with and desire the purpose that your company has built. Could be charitable, could be fun, it could be about hobbies, it could be about wealth creation, it could be about all kinds of different things. That your company has a purpose, and that purpose is greater than any one individual there. And if they can resonate with that thing, it brings a whole nother level of joy and fulfillment in being a part of that company. But you got to figure out what that thing is, and it's got to come essentially from you as an owner and from your leadership team for that reinforcement.
And it's got to be aligned with you. It can't be fake.
Real.
Yeah, it can't be fake. You can't go, hey, I want a really competitive company if you're not a competitive person. You can't have a real family type company if you're not a family oriented type person. And so you got to really consider, like, how do I build this culture? Because that's the beauty of it all, is you can actually design it. And if you follow this format that we're talking about with dream, vision, and purpose, that's the beginning of the design of it is, okay, where am I headed? What kind of vehicle do I need to build to get there? Why do we do the thing? Because that's going to be attractive to people, and I want those people to be people I'm aligned with. It
probably already exists too, just so you know.
Yeah, there's something there already.
The inside of your company, you probably already have a bit of an emergent purpose that exists, and you may not necessarily be aware of it because it's just a function of who you are.
Right.
So real quick, before we get down that rabbit trail a little bit too far, let's talk about the implementation of culture inside of your company. How do you make it a thing? Like, because I feel like that's where we're going anyways, but I want to make sure that we get there, right? So how do we do that? Like, give me examples that you've seen either personally or with companies that we've coached or anything like that. Like, how are they making the culture a real thing?
Well, let's take one more step first before we get
behavior.
How do we behave?
Behavior is going to be, in my mind at least, and I know a lot of people talk about culture, so by no means are we the end-all be-all when it comes to culture, but we have our own philosophies around it that resonate with some people and not with others, because we have a culture. So behavior, from kind of our thought at least, is a result of your core values. What do you value? What are the characteristics that are most important to you?
That are non-negotiable.
That are non-negotiable is correct. Like, you don't get to just say yes to this and no to that. What are your core values? And then your behavior should be an exemplification or a striving toward that core value. Right? So your core value could be professionalism. It could be generosity. It could be teamwork. It could be communication. It could be a number of different, and you can have more than one. Try not to have too many, because we want our people to be able to memorize and know these core values and have them in their mind. And if you've got 15 core values, that's kind of hard.
Really core.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to keep all that in your brain. So have your core values listed and communicated. Because if I say professionalism, that might mean one thing to one person and another thing to another, and they both think they're living out the core value when in fact neither of them might be.
That's part of the implementation.
So the implementation part is the communication. Your core values are absolutely critical. Now, almost everybody that's hearing this and that's in this room has probably worked at a company that had core values, and they put them up on a wall. And their core values, for a lot of companies, were the result of a marketing campaign. And it wasn't that they were core values, they were just some really nice words that they thought people would like to hear about you and your business.
It might be able to get people to get hired.
It might get people hired. Well, and quite frankly though, if we're being honest, when was the last time you purchased a product because of the core value, because of the stated core values of the company who produced that product? I can't. Now, I may have purchased a product because of the way that that company is, and because of the way that they are and the way that they act and what they do. That is a result of their core values. But I've never looked at a company, looked up their core values, and then said, I'm going to buy their thing because of these 5 words. 5. So you got to realize that your core values are not about putting words on a wall that will inspire a customer to buy from you, because it doesn't work. Just pick your favorite company and see if you can name their core values.
Now, he's not saying not to put them on a wall. What he's saying is, if you don't live them, you don't communicate them, you don't hold them as non-negotiable.
And you don't hold your people accountable to those behaviors and those core
They're
values.
not worth the poster you put them on. So those core values, and this is like, if we don't cover what culture is, then it's hard to discuss the implementation of it.
Yeah.
So these behaviors that are non-negotiable. In other words, you live them. They are pronounced in the way that you go about doing things. When something combats one of those behaviors, like let's say, for example, honesty was one of your core values. That was one of ours whenever I owned a roofing business. We did restoration work. We had people that did supplementing. One day, one of our supplementers comes walking in, and she is just pumped. She's excited. Hey, just want to let you know, we're going to make a bunch of money on this job. I'm like, that's awesome. That's great. I love it. What's going on? She goes, well, we had 2 houses side by side. They're both with State Farm, both with the same adjuster. And what I think happened is, I think he used the measurements from one house for the other house because they looked the same from the front. I went, well, what's different about them? Well, the one house has a whole extra piece on the back of it, and that's the one he used the measurements from. I said, so there was more squares on that one versus this one. How many more? She goes, 14. I said, so there's 14 squares on this home that don't exist.
Nobody knows what squares mean, so if you're not a roofer, what he's saying is
Square
one
feet.
house was actually bigger than the other one.
1,400 square feet more of roofing surface which would mean more money without having to do the thing.
Right.
Well, like I said, our core value is honesty. And I went, that's really cool, but follow me. We walked out of my office, walked across what we called the war room because we had a competitive culture. And we're heading towards the wall, and I did have all of my core values on the wall. And as we start beelining and she sees where I'm headed, she's like, oh. Because on the wall, it hung with honesty. And it said honesty even when others aren't looking. And she goes, well, I'm like, this is my job. This is what I do. I cannot do that job that way. Let's go make the call together. So I called the insurance company, called the adjuster. Mr. Adjuster, I think you've paid us too much money. I think that this house is this and this house is this. I know you were on both of them. I don't know if you just used the same one over, made a mistake, but we know for a fact that this one is 1,400 square feet less than this one. So we would like you to correct it so you don't get in any trouble. There was complete silence on the other end of the line. I'm like, are you still there? He goes, yeah, I've never had anybody call me to tell me I paid too much. I went, hey, I like to be first. He goes, what's the name of your company? Told him the name. He said, hey, if I ever have a homeowner that needs a great contractor, can I send them your way? I said, I would love that. That would be wonderful. That guy proceeded to send us 81 jobs that year. So for 14 squares and living to my core values and being beholden to them, showing that I actually have them as a non-negotiable, even though I could have made a little more money on that project, and I think most would have, she got to see that from me. She got to tell that story over and over again, and it became how the implementation looks. You actually live it. And we got 81 jobs out of it. That's wonderful. It actually helped our business by being non-negotiable on the core value. So don't make a core value you can't live to, and that you can't hold others accountable
Or
to.
that isn't real.
Yeah, because it isn't real if you can't.
Everyone has to be held accountable to it. Because I can tell you right now, If you have a core value that's teamwork, for example, and you got one of those sales guys that is just an absolute pain in everybody's ass, and nobody likes this guy, but he generates millions a year in sales, and you don't hold him accountable, then everybody knows that core value, that there's another core value that is unspoken that's actually being implemented rather than the teamwork. And that would be revenue. So we know revenue is a core value, and that one is superseding the teamwork core value because this person who is either toxic or doesn't live by this core value is allowed to continue. So it's got to be across the board, and it's got to apply to everyone.
To the point that you let somebody go over it if they cannot live to the core values.
To the extent that you think it might hurt you.
It's actually a barrier to entry into the business. It's one of the first things we're talking. We're sharing our vision. We're sharing why we do what we do. We share what our behaviors and core values are, and that we expect everybody that works here to be those things. That will repel some people, and that's okay. You don't want them on your team.
So, quick question, because I've heard us say those things, and then they just heard us say, if you don't fit the culture, you got to let go. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of where that kind of comes in, and where's that line kind of drawn between leaving them alone and do your thing, and, hey, man, you got to go.
Is it a part of your culture that not everybody has to participate in it? Because that could certainly be a component. Because I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the isolation structure when you're dealing with a rep who just doesn't get along with everybody, and you isolate them, okay? Does that conflict with your core values? Because it's possible that it doesn't. It's possible that maybe this guy, just for whatever reason, doesn't play well with others.
Maybe teamwork's not one of your core values.
And maybe teamwork isn't one of the core values.
I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page here, because I didn't want somebody to come back and say, well, you said this and now you're saying this, so where's the line drawn there?
Everybody's culture is a little bit differently. Like, there's things that Jim personally is willing to put up with or not put up with that I will or won't put up with myself. And so you just have to understand what those things are. And if isolating a rep for that purpose, if it violates your core values, then you're violating your own tenets, and you have to be aware of that. If you look at that possibility and you go, I don't think this actually violates anything, but you just have to be aware of yourself, because you might be violating your own core values out of greed. And if you're doing that, that doesn't mean that you won't make any money, and quite frankly, it doesn't mean that you won't do well. You might still do just fine.
But
don't fool yourself.
But if one of your core values is a place to belong, you can't isolate somebody. Yeah. So you have to balance that. Like, are you one of those companies that allows that? Well, okay, it can't be in your core values. If you are one of those companies that doesn't allow it, then they can't be there.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Like, I'm just trying to get some clarity on that.
It's a great question, because what happens when you have people that don't fit exactly correctly? Well, then the question is, well, what exactly are you after?
Yeah, me personally, that would not be a part of my company. I don't believe in isolating human beings. Mm-hmm. I just don't. First off, I think it's bad for them. I also think it's bad for the overall culture.
Yeah.
But that's me. And revenue is not my bottom line driving factor of why I do what I do.
Yeah. Because I also think within that, you also have, with like each person that works there, they have their own personal like morals and things that may not be core values of the company, but they're core values to them, right? So let's say there's a company out there and maybe they're like, I know my culture is not what it needs to be right now. I'm fully aware of this. I need to change it. How do they change it if it's already been something else that they're trying to go from one place to the next?
So, they could just read this book. It's in there. Like what we've just talked about.
Shameless plug. Get the book.
There's lots of content on culture for sure out there.
Well, yeah, the book, everything that we're talking about is very well lined out in the book, so I highly recommend reading that. But ultimately, it's going to start with, I think there's a process for this, and so it starts with, once again, self-awareness and identification. So you got to get yourself and your closest people, maybe depending on the size of your company, it might just be you and your right-hand person. It could be you and your leadership team. And we need to establish or reestablish what makes us special. Why are we all here to begin with? At one point, Billy, you came to work for us. Why? Like, what was it that made you go, I'm going to go work for that guy. And why did we enjoy this place at one point, even if we don't now? And if you can establish that, then you got to document it. And so you can kind of run with what we're talking about. Okay, what was our vision? Where are we at in accomplishing that? Then what is our purpose? What do we truly believe we're all about? What are our core values, okay? So when you lay this out and you're dealing with a company that doesn't feel like it's at where it should be culturally, and you're dealing with drama, and you're dealing with passive aggressive people, and you're dealing with backbiting and fighting and just the jet that's going on inside your business, is almost not all. I think I can say confidently 100% of the time, if you're dealing with that, it means that some core values and some purpose or nature of your company is being violated. Now, it could be getting violated because we've forgotten about it and we just haven't been talking about it and we've let it go, right? Like a beautiful rose bush, we just quit tending. Or it could be that we just never established it and people are just conducting themselves in whatever way they think fits best for them. Either way, we have to establish what it is and who we are. Then we got to do one of my favorite things is what I call culture rollout. And culture rollout is when we take this documentation that we have and we get the entire company together and then we either introduce or reintroduce who we are to the business. Okay, now I think it was the Fraziers who talked about this when they did this, and it was a prediction that I made because we've seen this so many times. I said, hey, if you go to church, you're about to see the same people at your culture rollout that you see at church. And at church, there's generally three kinds of people. You're going to see the people who have their book open and they're taking notes and they're engaged and they're listening and they're going, and they're hitting their wife like, hey, that was for you, right? and they're all over it, okay? And they're going, yeah, right, they're engaged. Then you've got the people who maybe have never heard this before. You might have hired some people who've never heard you talk about this and they're going, huh.
A little shocked.
Yeah, they're like, well, this is different, or this is interesting, or I've never been a part of a company that's had this experience before, that's done this. Like, they're not against it. They're just going, okay, right? Like, maybe they're nodding, or they're just a little confused. Then you have the third type of person at church and at your culture rollout, and they look like this. Because they know that they've been violating the culture. They know that they don't jive with what you're saying, or they don't agree with it, or they think you're lying and they're not on board. Though that's the third type, those are the ones you have to pay very, very close attention to, because if you execute on your culture correctly, either A, you're going to see an about face with those people, or they'll be gone within 6 months.
For sure, yeah. That's a great explanation. And that rollout is key because you're doing it with everybody. You're paying attention. You're self-aware. You are watching the faces of everybody else. But the key part of that whole rollout is the consistency after that day to it. This, like the very next day. We do this a lot in our stuff. I recognize people for loving, serving, and caring. Hey man, you did a great job of serving that client. Really appreciate it. Whew, that took a lot of love to bear that and go and do it anyway. Well done. Super proud of you. It's something that I'm intentional about. I'm talking about all the time. And I've noticed you guys talking about it too. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I try to consistently bring this thing out. And you guys wouldn't be here if I didn't explain it to you the very first day that that's who we were. And you were aligned with it. And you bought into it right away. Yeah. If you're not talking about it, you're not living it, and you're not encouraging it, it'll die.
Now that's where a lot of the creativity, a lot of the fun stuff can show up. Yep. So we've talked about living out your core values as being a way of implementing your culture, but like some people will say, well, culture isn't just about, we have beanbags in our office, right? Like, okay, I get it, okay. But the thing is, like, having beanbags in your office can be a component of it's evidence or a result of your culture. It's not having culture.
You have either of two core values. One that's fun, we need break time, fun, that kind of thing. Or you have a competitive culture. We're going to compete doing it.
Right. So
that might be why you have the beanbags. The beanbags aren't the culture; they foster the culture you've created.
What's funny is you're talking about cornhole, and I'm talking about the sacks you sit in.
Oh, I'm talking about core.
With you, bro. With the big like 3 foot
No.
sacks that you just go sit
So
in.
that shows you a difference in culture. Like he's lazy and likes to lay in bean bags. I like to compete and throw cornhole
Even though
bags.
he lost to me. So here's and Tommy was on our team. But the fun part though it's not just the seriousness of living to your core values, it's also the creativity and the fun. Like if we're a competitive culture, what kind of things would a competitive culture do? So it's like if you're talking to Nathan and you go, what is Nathan like? And Nathan goes, I like to go fast. What would somebody like Nathan like to do if he likes to go fast? It could be dirt bikes. I have a motorcycle. I'm into cars and go-karts. I love roller coasters. I have jumped out of a perfectly good airplane before. Going fast is something I like to do, and you know it because of the things that I enjoy and I do. So what is it that your company is all about? And if your company is all about that, what would a company that's all about that do? And so that's where you see things like Taco Tuesdays, or there's a nap room at your office, or we have a gym. I've seen companies that actually have a fully appointed workout facility with their company because their people are about fitness and health, and they've got a cold plunge or what. Maybe there's I've talked to companies where part of their goals were to have a daycare. They wanted to have a daycare that was run by either people they knew or whatever right next to their office so that their people had a place to bring their kids. Single parents or parents, maybe both parents worked at the company. So there's all these different components. You might go to Topgolf. Maybe your people hate Topgolf. Maybe you do fishing trips or hunting trips, or maybe you guys you get together and watch sports of some kind. So
we do the fantasy football league.
The fantasy football league that you guys do, like all of that, I don't participate in that at all. So maybe the trash talk, I probably participate in that a little bit. But what does it look like then? And that's where the fun stuff can start to come out. And you can incentivize rewarding people for exemplifying core values, and there's all kinds of really cool, fun ideas. And odds are, you probably have somebody in your company who really gets your culture, loves your culture, and has that funky little creative spark to think of these kinds of things and then get them going inside your business.
I think maybe the best way to think about your culture is to think about it like a secret sauce recipe. I've got this recipe and I have ingredients. I've got a vision. I've got my core values. I've got my purpose and why we do. And they're each individually unique. And when you put them together, they're your secret sauce. They're the thing that makes you unique versus every other opportunity that is unlike anything that has ever existed in the history of man. There's more opportunity today than there ever has been before for somebody to work somewhere. Why would they work at your place? What's the secret sauce? And that secret sauce has lots of ingredients. There's some base ingredients that we've shared with you, but there's some secret ingredients that you put in. Some of our secret ingredients, we like to have fun. That's another one of our core values. And we do some pretty silly stuff around here, mostly Nathan. We also have another ingredient that's mastery. Sorry, just kidding. See, we're supposed to have fun, right? Mastery is another one of our core values, that we're trying to get better every day at what we do. I look at us today, 10 years after we started, and it is a whole different ballgame. We have gotten so much better at what we do, but we still haven't achieved mastery. We still haven't become what we believe we can be, and we're constantly striving for that. That's a bit of our secret sauce. And one of our other ingredients, and this is something for you to consider, is what does that look like, your interaction with your client? Is it an experience, something that you create that's unlike anybody else that you have out there? For us, our relationship with our client is really the secret ingredient to our overall secret sauce. That we know you. We're in relationship with you. We're walking side by side with you. Our purpose is to empower you to believe in yourself, maybe believe in us as your guide. And who knows, somewhere along the way, maybe we talk about that guy up there. Maybe you want to believe in that too. Because if you listen to our core values, they have a believer's faith to them. Now, I know I get pretty deep there, and I'm explaining our culture to you. It's not the thing we jump out there with first. We do those actions to love, serve, and care. And who knows, you might just ask us why we are the way we are. So really think about, like, I've got an ingredient list. These are the things I need to have. I need to have a dream I'm after, a vision of my company, a purpose of why we do it that aligns with me, core values that are non-negotiable, and ideally a mission for your year that you're all on board for. We haven't even talked about that yet, but simply a goal that you want to achieve for the year together that you can rally the team around. When you have those main ingredients, what are the little secret ingredients that you put in there? Like relationship with your clients, the serving your community in a specific way. Maybe you're into all the little sports teams and you want to go help those sports teams. Maybe you're about the soup kitchens and food pantries and those type of things. Those are those little secret ingredients that make you unique, really speak to people, draw people in that are much like you. And whenever we're together and we're alike, we can do some pretty great things together. Best way to know you got a fake culture?
Fake culture? Okay.
You don't live it.
Well, I also heard, it was one of you two said this, if the owner doesn't set the culture, the employees will.
For sure. 100%. Somebody, you're going to have one. The other choice is, do you design it or do you have it designed for you organically by the people that work for you? Yeah. Most times, those can start out okay, but it's like a secret sauce that you allowed a bad ingredient into.
Yeah.
At some point, a bad ingredient jumps into it and makes the sauce terrible.
Yeah.
Well, the thing you have to realize is that as you're building your business, the smaller you are, the less your culture kind of matters. And the reason is because when you begin to generate opportunities and you need to bring people into your company, who do you reach for first? The people that are closest to you. And the people that are closest to you are probably the most like you. Family, friends, people inside of your community that you know well, and birds of a feather flock together. So culture doesn't seem like a real big deal because I grab my brother and I have my wife working with me and I have my kid working on this section here and my best friend, and we're all very similar to begin with. So at that point in that stage, you're probably feeling like, man, my culture's actually really good, and it is. Mm-hmm. It's when you begin to bring strangers aboard and people who aren't in that immediate circle that we have to create a high, because the fact that they were close enough that you reached out to them and offered that opportunity to them means that you're probably not going to have much of a cultural issue. But you need to create a bit of a standard that somebody needs to meet or at least be a part of or be bought into to join that group of people. And that's when defining your culture and document starts to become important.
And do it together with those people you
and
first brought on.
Bring those people aboard with you. Bring everybody
that
in
first
on
group
it.
that you're all kind of aligned and you feel good culture with. Let's define it. Nobody else is allowed in this family unless they fit that.
Mm-hmm. That'll keep you from building a company you hate in a couple of years.
Have you heard that there's a social network just for you? Well, if you haven't, you're going to. It's the Contractor Collective. It's a purpose-driven social network that we built just for you, so you have a community that's just like you, sharing information to make us all better. No negativity, no distraction. If you're anything like me, you hate social media because of all the distraction and ads and all the other garbage, algorithm telling you what you want. This allows you to create your own algorithm to follow the people you want to follow and get the feed that you want to have. There's also all kinds of other training content, groups to join, fun stuff to do as a community of contractors without the distraction of traditional social media. If that sounds like a good thing for you, go to the Play Store, go to the App Store, download the app and join today, or join right below. In the description, there's a link. Invite all your friends, and we'll see you inside Contractor Collective.